Today we're going to gather writing by studying characters. This is part of our How to Write a Literary Essay. Today I want to teach you that skilled readers of fiction pay special attention to the characters in a story. They especially pay attention to the main character traits, motivations, struggles, changes, and life lessons. In fact, there's a whole set of questions that we should ask ourselves. What is the character like? What traits do they possess? And more importantly, you have to say, how do I know that? What motivates my character to do what they're doing? How do I know that? What struggle does my character have? How do I know that? Does my character change over the course of the book? How do I know that? What relationship does the character have, and how do they influence the character? Is it a good influence? Bad? Neutral? How do I know that? This is just like making a claim and providing evidence of how you know something. Back to our book, Amazing Grace, and let's think about our new set of writer's questions. Try to see the character through the character's eyes. Empathize with them. Try to see their point of view and know what they're feeling. It's not enough anymore to give the main idea of the book and move on. It is definitely not enough to give a summary of the book and move on. It's time for us to dig deeper, to show what we know and how we know it. Writer's question number 1 was, what is the character like? What traits do they possess? We're looking for evidence. So how do I know is the evidence part of it. I'm going to pull out just one small piece of Amazing Grace. We'll use that as our evidence for this part. What is the character like? What traits do they possess and how do I know? So in this section, let's read it together. Grace was a girl who loved stories. She didn't mind if they were read to her or told to her or made up in her own head. She didn't care if they were from books or on TV or in films or on the video or out of Nana's long memory. Grace just loved stories. And after she had heard them, or sometimes while they were still going on, Grace would act them out. And she always gave herself the most exciting part. From this page alone, I know a lot about Grace, including things the author didn't tell me. Just remember, there isn't a right or wrong answer here. Your writing shows what you know about the character and how you know that information. Someone else's writing might be very different than yours, and that's okay. Here's some things that I noticed just from reading alone. Grace has an active imagination. I know this because Grace is always acting out stories. No one tells her to do this. This isn't an assignment. She just loves to act, and she loves to recreate the stories no matter where they come from. She can see in her mind how each character would react as the story unfolds. I also know that Grace trusts and loves her mom and grandma, and they love her. I know this because they read to her. Sometimes they act with her or let her pretend with them. She also tells them about her problems and worries and listens to their advice. We don't necessarily see that in just this portion of the text, but in the book overall. I also know that Grace is a strong person. I know this because she didn't let other people's opinions stop her from doing what she loved. Grace isn't afraid to take risks. I know this because she's always choosing the most adventurous parts to play for herself. She isn't afraid to act in front of her classmates and a whole audience, and she isn't afraid to do what she loves, even when people tell her she couldn't. Getting the idea of things that you already know about the character, but the author never tells you. So in question number 2, we're looking at what motivates the character to do what they're doing. And how do you know that? Well, to understand motivation, we have to kind of think about what typically motivates a person to do anything. So in character motivations, there are basic things like food, clothing, and shelter. These basic needs. Is that motivating your character to do something? Well, let's think about that in Grace's case. Is she really looking for food, clothing, or shelter? Not really. It seems like those ideas have been taken care of for her. Then there's safety and security. In safety and security, does the person feel safe? Do they feel like they're in a secure environment, in a secure space? So far from what we're seeing, the answer is yes. Grace feels safe. Love and belonging. In this category, does our character feel loved? Do they feel like they belong? This is where you might start questioning. So we'll come back to love and belonging. Self-esteem and self-respect. Do we see that Grace has self-esteem and self-respect? Yes, but in some cases, this might get a little shaky for Grace. We'll come back to that one as well. Self-actualization is a very, very tricky word. It simply means that everything under it, from basic food, clothing, and shelter, safety, love, belonging, and self-esteem, have already been met. A self-actualized person can work on higher level thinking because their basic needs have been met already. It's pretty rare that we come across a self-actualized character or that we see that their motivation is based on self-actualization. It does happen, but typically it's one of the other 4 levels that the character is struggling with. Motivates Grace. How do we know? Well, really, to figure this out, we have to look at one of Grace's problems. What problem does Grace have? So I went back to the pages where Grace's teacher asks if they want to play Peter Pan, and Grace keeps her hand up. In fact, even after 2 of her classmates say, no, you can't be Peter Pan because you're black. You can't be Peter Pan because you're a girl. Grace still keeps her hand up. So what motivates Grace? How do I know that? Let's look again at our chart and look carefully at the words that the author has put on the page for us. It can give us some clues as to what Grace is thinking, what motivates her to do what she's doing. You can't be Peter Pan, whispered Natalie. He wasn't black. But Grace kept her hand up. All right, said the teacher. Lots of you want to be Peter Pan, so we'll have to have auditions. We'll choose the parts next Monday. Well, it really didn't give us a lot of information other than that Grace kept her hand up. But it gives us a chance to look at the basics, food, clothing, shelter. I don't think it was that. Safety and security. Does Grace feel safe and secure? Well, in this case, she felt like she could still keep her hand up, so maybe. Love and belonging. Self-esteem, self-respect, and self-actualization. Take a minute to think. What do you think is motivating Grace? Again, there's no right or wrong answer here. You might think of a different motivation for a different part of the book. But in this case, Grace keeps her hand up because she has self-esteem and self-respect. How do I know that? Grace knows she's good at acting out parts because that's what she does every day. She's confident she could play the part of Peter Pan, specifically because she always takes the most exciting roles and knows how to act like a boy who can fly and have adventures. She's already done that. Grace also has a motivation based on safety and security. How do I know? Grace's teacher didn't dismiss her. She didn't tell Grace she couldn't try out because she was a girl or because she was black. Instead, Grace's teacher held a tryout. This means that Grace felt confident and trusted her teacher to give her an equal chance to play the part of Peter Pan. Think how different this book might have been if her teacher echoed what the classmates said and told Grace she couldn't play the part because she was a girl or she was black. In question 3, we look at what struggles does my character have and how do I know that? Let's read a section from this part of the text. When Grace got home, she seemed rather sad. What's the matter? Asked Ma. Roush said I couldn't be Peter Pan because I'm a girl. That just shows all Ron knows about it, said Ma. Peter Pan is always a girl. So in this case, Grace is sad because she believes her classmates at first when they tell her Peter Pan can't be a girl or black. Grace struggles to know who to believe. How do I know that? Well, I know because instead of telling her classmates they're wrong, Grace goes home feeling sad. She thinks her chance at being Peter Pan is over, so she's very sad about that. Grace is a little happier when her mom and grandmother tell her that Peter Pan can be a girl and black. But you get the sense she doesn't believe her grandmother when her grandmother says Grace can be anything she wants to be. But it isn't enough to say Grace doesn't believe her grandmother. I need to tell how I know this. I know Grace didn't believe her grandmother when she said that Grace could be anything, because Grace wasn't celebrating. But later, after she's seen the ballet, Grace plays the part of Juliet and she dances. But more importantly, she says, I can be anything I want. I can even be Peter Pan. This shows that Grace finally believes that she really can be anything. Writer's question number 4 asks, does my character change over the course of the book? How do I know that? Well, we do definitely see that Grace changes. Grace is confident when she's at home. She loves and trusts her mom and grandmother and can be anything she wants when she's around them. But at school, Grace isn't as confident. When other people tell her she can't be anything she wants to be, Grace believed them. Grace begins to believe she can really be anything after she went to the play and saw a beautiful performer just like her, doing what she dreamed of doing. Grace works hard pretending to be Peter Pan and wins the role. Her confidence at school and during the school play shows now Grace is confident not only at home, but also at school. So Grace's confidence over from the beginning of the book comes full circle until she is confident in all areas. Writer's question number 5 asks, what relationships does the character have, and how do they influence the character? Is it a good influence? Bad? Neutral? How do I know? If you paid attention to the illustration on the previous page, you can see that Grace has a special relationship with her mom and her grandma. She always makes eye contact with them, and you can tell she loves them. But pictures aren't always enough. The words also help us realize that Grace has a lot of relationships in this book. Her relationship with her family helps Grace believe in herself. They're a good influence on Grace. But let's talk about Grace's friends. Are Grace's friends bad? No. Grace's friends don't mean to be unkind when they tell her she can't be Peter Pan because she's black or because she's a girl. They're not bad. They truly believe that Grace can't be Peter Pan because they've never seen a girl that's Peter Pan or a black Peter Pan before. Just because they don't have experience with a different type of Peter Pan leads them to influence Grace into believing she can't play the part she wants. That doesn't make her friends bad. In the end, her friends at school vote for Grace. When they see her try out for the part, she proves to them that she would be a good Peter Pan, and this completely changes their minds. Now it's your turn. Today you're going to follow along with the book Stand Tall, Molly Lou Mellon by Patti LaBelle and answer the character questions that all writers ask. Remember, those questions are, what is a character like? What traits do they possess? What motivates my character to do what they're doing? What struggles does my character have? Does my character change over the course of the book? And what relationships does the character have, and how do they influence the character? More importantly, for each of those questions, you need to provide evidence. How do you know? What words does the author use to give you the overall idea that answers your question? Now off you go. Remember to think like a writer as you're reading. After reading, ask yourself the writer's questions. Finally, be sure to provide evidence from the book that explains how you know the answers to your questions.